When people watch movies like Coraline, The Addams Family, Casper, or Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, they often might think, this is a Tim Burton movie. Dark skies, twisted buildings, pale faces, long shadows. It feels like his style, but it isn't just his. It began over 100 years ago in Germany, and it started a revolution. From shadows to scissors, German Expressionism's revolution ended Tim Burton's style. Before the German Expressionist movement, which began through the 1910s, movies often strived for realism. Buildings stood straight, shadows looked natural, and stories followed simple rules. Then German filmmakers like Robert Wiener, F.W. Murnau, and Fritz Lang changed everything. Nothing looks normal, because the world is meant to feel unstable. In The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, released in 1920, streets bend and twist. Windows are sharp and pointed. Even the shadows are painted on the walls. Nosferatu, released in 1922, is an uncredited retelling of Bram Stoker's classic book Dracula. In the film, a shadow climbs the wall, and not the actual vampire. We fear the shape without even seeing the creature. The shadow becomes the villain. In Metropolis, released in 1927, the city towers over people like a machine. The buildings are massive and overwhelming. The world feels cold and mechanical, and the people seem small. The style and tone of these expressionist movies was the start of a revolution. Movies stopped trying to copy reality. Instead, they started shaping reality to create emotion. Fear wasn't just part of the story. It was built into the design. It was in the shapes. It was in the lighting. It was in the shadows. These were not accidents. The style started a revolution by changing how the visuals in movies can make people feel. And once audiences learned to fear shadows, they never forgot. Hollywood reacts. Across the world in the United States, Hollywood movie moguls like Carl Laemmle saw something powerful in these movies and style. German filmmakers also started immigrating to America, many of them to flee the rise of Nazism in Europe. They also brought their ideas and style with them. Universal Studios began making monster films like Dracula and Frankenstein in the early 1930s. Like the Expressionist movement in Germany, there were the tall castles, the deep shadows, as well as the dramatic lighting. These films were reacting to the Expressionist revolution. The horror genre was born from that reaction. Even directors like Alfred Hitchcock, who studied in Germany during this movement, used textbook examples of Expressionism to build suspense. The idea of a creepy house on a hill? That wasn't always frightening. German Expressionism taught audiences to feel that way. Hollywood reformed the revolution into something new, where even a family-friendly Disney film like 1961's Babes in Toyland uses the trope of a crooked house on a hill to introduce the villain. The style spread, and it became normal. So normal that most people tended to be oblivious not only to where the style came from, but also why they tended to react the way they did when viewing certain images. These reactions are not innate, they are learned, based on years of exposure to these types of images. Tim Burton, reforming Expressionism. But what about Tim Burton? Many people call him a visionary, and there is no doubt that he is. But a glimpse into his world also reveals that his vision, like many artists, have been influenced by the works of others. In Batman, Gotham City rises in dark towers, like Metropolis. In Edward Scissorhands, the main character feels isolated and misunderstood, like characters from Expressionist films. There are many stylistic signatures used by Tim Burton that directly relate to Expressionism. Just a few include sharp rooftops, swirling shapes, striped patterns, heavy shadows, barren trees, arches and doors, slanted walls, and metropolis settings. He inherited these signatures through years of watching movies made during the Expressionist movement and the American Universal monster films that were inspired by them, and can be traced back to Burton's childhood. When promoting Frankenweenie, released in 2012, Burton said, quote, I loved the old horror and monster films because they were emotional. It made me realize that being strange was okay." Unquote. Because of Burton, many people now recognize the style, but often they attach his name to that style rather than earlier artists who developed them. Movies like Coraline, The Addams Family, Casper, and Lemony Snicket continue using the same exaggerated shapes and dramatic lighting. The revolution didn't disappear. It reformed Hollywood. It became part of the visual language of film. When we feel uneasy because of a shadow, when we expect something bad to happen in a crooked house, audiences do not realize that they are reacting to a revolution that began in Germany. Conclusion. Revolutions don't always happen with armies. Sometimes they happen with art. German Expressionism changed how movies look. Hollywood reacted and built horror around it. Tim Burton reformed the style in the 1980s to become one of the most recognizable styles used by directors in Hollywood today. This influence shows just how powerful the German Expressionist revolution was on today's audiences. From silent films to monster movies to modern gothic fantasy, the shadows are still with us. And now, when we see them, we can better understand why.